What if the song you sing every single year at every birthday party you've ever attended was, legally speaking, something you weren't allowed to perform in public? Right now, somewhere, a group of people is singing Happy Birthday around a cake, phones out, filming the whole thing. Nobody's thinking twice about it. It feels like the most public, most universal, most obviously free piece of culture on Earth. Here's the twist. For about 80 years, that exact scene, people singing this song together and capturing it on camera, sat in a strange legal gray zone. Because technically, someone owned it. And that someone was making millions of dollars a year, quietly, off of one of the most sung pieces of music in human history. So the question is, how does a two-line children's song end up as a corporate cash machine for nearly a century, and who finally took it back? Let's go back to the beginning, not a courtroom, a kindergarten classroom. In 1893, two sisters named Patty and Mildred Hill were working in early childhood education in Kentucky. Patty was a kindergarten principal and Mildred was a musician. Together, they wrote a simple little melody meant to be sung by young children at the start of the school day. It wasn't called Happy Birthday at all. It was called Good Morning to All, and the original lyrics went, "Good morning to you, good morning to you, good morning, dear children, good morning to all." Here's what makes this so important. The melody, that exact tune you know, was built specifically to be simple enough for small children to sing easily, first thing in the morning, without needing much musical training at all. It wasn't designed to become a hit. It was designed to be forgettable in the best way, a tiny classroom ritual. But here's the thing, melodies have a way of drifting beyond their original purpose. Over the following years, other people, nobody knows exactly who first, started swapping out the good morning lyrics for birthday-themed ones instead. By the early 1900s, versions of Happy Birthday to You sung to that same tune were already floating around informally, passed from person to person the way folk songs usually spread, without anyone owning it, without anyone tracking it, without anyone really caring who wrote which specific line. Same energy as an inside joke that spreads through an entire school without anyone remembering who said it first. Here's where the story pivots from sweet classroom origin to legal minefield. Because in 1935, a version of the Happy Birthday lyrics was formally published and copyrighted by the Clayton F. Sumi Company, a music publisher. That copyright registration is the single moment this simple, communal little tune stopped being pure folklore and became legally somebody's property. Here's a detail that makes it even stranger. For most of those decades, hardly anyone outside the music publishing industry even knew the song was under copyright at all. It wasn't hidden exactly. It was just buried in licensing paperwork nobody outside the business ever had a reason to read. Millions of people were singing it every single day, completely unaware that technically, a corporation somewhere held the rights to the four lines coming out of their mouths. Think about that. A melody two sisters wrote for 5-year-olds ends up funneling into a corporate copyright registration decades later. From there, the rights to Happy Birthday changed hands multiple times, passed along through corporate acquisitions the way stocks or real estate might be, one company buying the rights from another, folding them into a larger portfolio of own music. Eventually, in 1988, the rights landed with Warner/Chappell Music, one of the biggest music publishing companies in the world, as part of a much larger acquisition deal. Here's what makes this so significant. Once Warner/Chappell owned the copyright, the company began enforcing it. Not against you singing it at your own birthday party in your living room. That kind of private, non-commercial use was never really the issue. The real issue was public performance. Movies, TV shows, Broadway productions, restaurants doing a birthday song routine. Anyone using Happy Birthday in a commercial or broadcast context was expected to pay licensing fees. And people did pay for decades. Filmmakers who wanted a character to sing Happy Birthday on screen had two choices: pay Warner/Chappell for the rights or write around it entirely, which is part of why you'll notice so many movies and TV shows over the decades either awkwardly cut away right before the song starts or have characters sing a different made-up birthday song instead. That's not a coincidence. That's decades of productions quietly avoiding a licensing fee. And it wasn't just movies and restaurants working around it. Some television productions reportedly built entire scenes around avoiding the song, cutting away right as a birthday moment began, or timing a scene so the cake shows up after the singing would have happened. Composers were sometimes hired specifically to write quick, forgettable birthday jingles as stand-ins, songs that exist purely because using 4 famous lines would have cost real money. Here's the number that makes this whole situation land differently. By some estimates, Happy Birthday was generating around $2 million a year in licensing revenue for Warner/Chappell. $2 million annually, from a 2-line melody originally written to help kindergartners get through their morning routine. Think about the scale of that for a second. One of the simplest songs that exists, 4 lines, 1 repeated melody, lyrics a toddler can memorize in about 10 seconds, was operating as a genuine corporate revenue stream for the better part of a century. But here's the but that finally cracked the whole thing open. In 2013, a documentary filmmaker named Jennifer Nelson was working on a film specifically about the song Happy Birthday itself. And in a moment of almost poetic irony, she was asked to pay a licensing fee to Warner/Chappell just to include the song in her documentary about the song. Instead of paying quietly like so many productions before her, Nelson did something different. She dug into the actual paper trail behind the copyright, and she filed a lawsuit. The lawsuit argued that Warner/Chappell's copyright claim was built on shaky ground. The core issue: The 1935 copyright registration covered a specific piano arrangement of the song, not necessarily the underlying lyrics and melody themselves, which had already been floating around informally for decades before that registration ever existed. Here's the pivot that changes everything. In 2015, a federal judge reviewed the historical evidence, old sheet music, publishing records, letters, decades of paper trail, and ruled that Warner/Chappell's copyright claim didn't actually hold up. The company had never properly secured rights to the specific lyrics everyone associates with the song. The judge essentially found that the legal foundation Warner/Chappell had been standing on for years was far weaker than anyone realized. That ruling led to a 2016 settlement. Warner/Chappell agreed to pay back $14 million to people and productions who had paid licensing fees over the years, and this is the part that matters most. The courts confirmed "Happy Birthday to You" was officially in the public domain, free for everyone permanently. Same reaction millions of filmmakers probably had: wait, we could have just used it this whole time. Here's what makes this bigger than just one weird legal footnote. This case became one of the most cited examples in ongoing debates about copyright law specifically. How something so deeply embedded in everyday culture, so communally owned in practice, ended up legally privatized for generations based on documentation that turned out to be far shakier than anyone had bothered to challenge. It raised a real question that still gets debated today. How many other pieces of obviously public culture might be sitting under similar shaky corporate ownership, simply because nobody with the resources to fight it ever bothered to look closely? So here's the full picture. Two sisters write a simple morning song for young children in 1893. The lyrics quietly drift into a birthday version nobody specifically claims. A publishing company formally copyrights a version of it in 1935. That copyright gets passed along through corporate acquisitions for decades, eventually landing with Warner/Chappell in 1988. The company enforces it, collecting an estimated $2 million a year from movies, TV shows, and public performances. And then, almost accidentally, a documentary filmmaker trying to make a film about the song itself uncovers the shaky legal foundation the entire arrangement was built on, cracking open 80 years of quiet corporate ownership over 4 lines everyone already thought belonged to nobody in particular. So next time you're at a birthday party and everyone launches into that familiar little tune around a cake, remember, for most of the last century, that exact moment was technically someone else's intellectual property. It took one persistent person asking the right question to finally set it free. It's worth pointing out how unusual this outcome actually was. Copyright disputes like this rarely end with a full reversal. Usually a company just quietly settles, keeps a smaller version of its rights, and moves on. This one was different. The court didn't just award damages. It ruled the song never should have been under exclusive ownership in the first place, which is part of why this case still gets taught in copyright law discussions today, years later. Maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside this story. Sometimes the things that feel the most obviously shared, the most obviously everyone's, are quietly owned by someone, right up until somebody finally checks the paperwork. If you're into stories like this, the hidden ownership, legal fine print, and forgotten history behind things we take for granted, there's a lot more waiting to be uncovered in music history.